Here are some scary Native American history facts no one knew. Number 10. The last official Civil War widow, Helen Viola, died in 2020. Helen Viola was the wife of John Viola, who died in 1985. He was one of the very few soldiers to fight in both the Civil War and the Indian Wars. Yes, there were wars fought between the United States and various Native American tribes from the 1860s to the 1890s. These conflicts were known as the Indian Wars, and they were not really wars because the Native Americans had no chance of winning. They were simply called wars to boost the ego of the United States government, which was hellbent on stealing even more land from the Native Americans. The U.S. Army committed some truly horrific acts against the Native Americans during this period. Entire villages would be wiped out, and the soldiers would often burn the villages to the ground. Sometimes the soldiers would force the Native Americans to walk for miles and miles without food or water until they dropped dead of exhaustion. This is why Helen Viola's death in 2020 was such a big deal. She was the last living person who had family members on both sides of the Civil War and the Indian Wars. No, 9. Between 1830 and 1860. Thousands of Native Americans were forced to march west, also known as the Trail of Tears. This was done by the U.S. government in order to get more land for white settlers. Many Native Americans died of starvation and disease during the journey. Those that survived were given diseased blankets and weapons as gifts by the U.S. government. Number 8. In the early 1900s, the U.S. government began a campaign to kill off all the buffalo. This was done so that the Native Americans would have no choice but to give up their nomadic way of life and settle down on reservations. The buffalo were killed not only for their hides, but also for sport. It was estimated that over 25 million buffalo were killed during this time period. No, 7. From 1864 to 1865, the U.S. Army engaged in the systematic rape of Native American women. This was done as a form of revenge for the Native Americans killing white men. The soldiers would often brag about their conquests, and the commanding officers did little to stop it. No. 6. After the Civil War, many white Americans began to feel guilty about the way Native Americans had been treated. However, they soon found a way to justify their actions by claiming that Native Americans were uncivilized and needed to be tamed. This led to the creation of the Wild West and the image of the savage Indian that needed to be shot on sight. Number 5. During the Indian Wars, it was common for soldiers to scalp Native Americans and collect bounties for their scalps. This was a way of motivating soldiers to fight against the Native Americans, and a means of showing the brutality of the conflict. Number 4. The U.S. government has a long history of breaking treaties with Native Americans. In fact, out of the 567 treaties made with Native American tribes, only 40 were made by the current U.S. government. Most of these treaties have been broken. No. 3. The U.S. government has engaged in a policy of assimilation towards Native Americans since the 1800s. This involved forcing Native American children to attend boarding schools, where they were taught to speak English, convert to Christianity, and forget their native languages and customs. Many Native Americans suffered abuse and trauma at these schools. No. 2. In the early 1900s. The U.S. government began a campaign to remove all Native Americans from their ancestral lands. This involved forcibly moving Native Americans to reservations in the western United States. Many Native Americans resisted this forced relocation, but they were eventually successful. No one. The last official Civil War widow, Helen Viola, died in 2020. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time.